My printer broke this week. As you can imagine, I took this in a calm and collected fashion. My first instinct was get rid of the thing. And then I thought, well, perhaps it could be repaired. We live in a broken world. Think of the mob storming the Capitol in America. Think of the dangerous cladding put on high-rise flats. Think of the 2.4 million people worldwide who have died from COVID. Like my printer, our first instinct is perhaps to start again. We need to blame someone and then get rid of them. It's so easy when faced with evil, poverty, say, to blame asylum seekers, get rid of them. Or it's easy when people are dying of COVID to call it the China virus and put all the blame on Beijing. If we have problems, it's so easy to blame and attack outsiders as the source of evil. The scapegoat might be immigrants, Mexicans, Jews, Muslims, or whoever. The Noah story, which was our first reading set for this, the first Sunday in Lent, addresses this issue. Those early chapters of Genesis are fascinating material. There are ancient sagas, traditional tales, folklore. Parallels can be found throughout the ancient world. For instance, the Mesopotamian epic called Gilgamesh, which speaks of a flood destroying all humanity. In one such story, the reason the gods destroy human beings are because they are just too noisy, and the gods are looking just for a little bit of peace and quiet. I imagine there's probably quite a number of parents who could sympathise with that view. However, if we dismiss the Noah story as only an ancient saga, we miss its real point. These traditional stories are recycled by the biblical writers to make a more profound point than how to deal with noisy teenagers. The biblical compiler retells the story of Noah to illustrate how to deal with evil. At first, they go along with the accepted view: you fight evil by destroying it. So the writer quotes, The Lord saw that human wickedness was great on earth. The Lord regretted having made human beings. So the editor starts with following the idea that the mighty flood is sent to cleanse the earth of wickedness. Yet even here there's an extra twist, showing something of the mercy of God. Noah and his family, and representatives of all creation, the animals, are saved by the building of a great boat, the ark. However, and this is the point of the Noah story, the strategy doesn't work. The world may be wiped clean, but evil has a way of creeping back in. So can the world be repaired rather than destroyed? The biblical author takes a new approach using this ancient saga. The climax of the Genesis story is not the destruction of humanity, but God's promise, his covenant of hope. No matter how much the world may go astray, God will not seek to destroy it, but to repair it. And the rainbow is interpreted as the sign of God's solemn promise. Genesis was probably completed sometime in the 6th century BC, when Israel was indeed faced with the possibility of total destruction. The country had been invaded by the Babylonians. Their rulers had either been killed or taken away as refugees. The temple itself was nothing but a smoking ruin. So the people of Israel at that time, this flood story, What a message of hope. God has not abandoned his people. God will remain faithful to his covenant. Total destruction is not God's way of tackling evil. There is an alternative. A 19th century writer, Henry Thoreau, wrote, "There are thousands hacking away at the branches of evil to everyone who is working at the roots." Floodlight total destructions are like cutting off branches. God's way is to tackle the roots. Evil does not reside in some external enemy who must be destroyed. The roots of evil are within each one of us. Jesus reminds us that good fruits depend on good roots. Today's Gospel shows the beginning of Jesus' ministry when he is driven into the wilderness for a time of temptation. He struggles about how he is to bring in God's kingdom of love and justice. Should he raise an army and fight against the oppression of the evil Roman Empire? No, that would just be hacking off the branches, not tackling the roots. He must take the much harder path of opening lives to the transforming power of God's love. Lent invites us to work not on the branches, but on the roots of evil. We are encouraged to open up our lives to God's goodness. The early Christians saw Lent as a time of struggle between good and evil, was fought most keenly. The 5th century Pope Leo wrote, "Certainly we need to be on our guard all the year round, but during Lent greater wariness and keener prudence are called for." So Lent is not just a time to give up chocolate. It's a call to join that cosmic struggle between good and evil, of transforming creation with God's love. Traditionally, there are 3 ways of keeping Lent. By prayer, that's drawing close to that transforming fire of God's love. Almsgiving, that's actively working for peace and justice in the world. Fasting, that's eschewing luxury and living simpler lives which do not exploit and damage God's wonderful creation. Let's use this Lent to allow God to repair just one small part of creation, ourselves. We do so by ensuring that our roots are being watered by the transforming power of God's love. As Jesus reminds us, if you want good fruit, you must have good roots. Amen.